and welcome back to There's Danger Here. I'm Leilani. When it comes to the MMIW cases, it's hard to focus. There are simply too many stories, too much tragedy. But each month I attempt to gather and highlight one or a few so that others can maybe come to understand just how widespread this issue is. Today, I accidentally focused on many members of the Navajo Nation, with the exception of the first girl that I'll speak of. That wasn't even my intent. That's just how it came to be. So as always, let's get into it, shall we? Veronica Cruz. While people mourn the loss of Emily Pike, the same group home is the site of another missing person. 17-year-old Veronica Cruz went missing on May 18th, 2024. For almost a year, there were no updates or information disseminated by law enforcement or any other agency. That changed as she neared her 18th birthday. The group home CEO reported that she was back with relatives on April 3rd, 2025. However, there seems to be no confirming data. According to K-12 News, Mesa PD's response was stated, quote, because she is under 18, an investigator would need to physically see that she is okay before changing any case status, and due to her age, she would have to be taken to her guardian and not just released, end quote, said Detective Brady Myers, a Mesa PD public information officer. She also stated, quote, I would encourage anyone with information about her whereabouts to call in and let us know, end quote, continuing with the notion that Veronica is in fact still missing. Christine Lester. Christine Lester was born in 1963 and grew up in Indian Wells, Arizona, and is part of the Navajo Nation. She went to Toye Junior High boarding school and then Tuba City High School, where she graduated. She left home to attend Haskell University, where she was studying to become a nurse. Christine came home for a visit with a family in May. On May 5th, 1987, 24-year-old Christine decided to go shopping at the Flagstaff Mall, which was approximately an hour and 45 minutes west of her home. And at approximately 6 a.m., Christine informed her grandma that she was heading there. Hitchhiking was typical for the time. According to AZ family, Shauna, Herbert, and LaBrenda Rockwell remember their sister in photographs and memories. Quote, she always hitchhiked. Back in the day, a lot of people did, end quote, said Shauna. Christine had informed her uncle that she'd be back by the time he was due to be off work. Quote, we don't know if she made it to Flagstaff. We don't know. That's where she wanted to go, end quote, said Shauna. At this time, Christine was 5'4" and weighed approximately 120 pounds, with brown eyes and brown hair. She left wearing a silver bracelet with turquoise inlay engraved with her name. 16 days later, her remains were found on the side of a rural road in Madera County, California. But at the time, she was not identified. Instead, she was labeled as a Jane Doe and buried. According to AZ family, quote, in 2020, a deputy renewed the effort to identify her, and her body was exhumed to create a DNA profile. In March 2023, a DNA match to one of Christine's brothers was finally made, end quote. Christine's family was notified in late April 2023. Of being notified of the positive identification, Sister Shauna stated, quote, I didn't want to hear the news. I wanted her to come home, end quote. Her murder remains under investigation. While cause of death has been identified, authorities are keeping that information close to the chest. Christine was brought home and a memorial service was conducted with family. 36 years to the date that she went missing. She was laid to rest next to her mother and grandmother, who had continued to look for Christine until they passed. Quote, I'd just like to say, welcome home, Christine. Shadi, which means big sister, end quote, Rockwell said. If anyone knows any information, authorities would like you to call Madera County Sheriff's Office at 559 675 7770 and ask for Detective Louis Paget. Mary Margaret Begay. Mary Begay was born in 1937. In 1957, the 20-year-old left her home in Leop, Arizona, heading to the Grand Canyon Inn to work. At this time, Mary's was between 5'2" and 5'5" and was approximately 120 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. On August 8th, she left her home wearing a white sweater and capris and headed to work at the Bright Angel Lodge at the Grand Canyon. After work, she and 3 friends walked from the employee dorms to the Grand Canyon Inn for some drinks. Later that evening, one of the friends reported that Mary got into the car with 2 Hopi men. She was not seen again. When she missed work the next day, she was fired and her belongings were simply packed up. Her employer didn't notify anyone. As a result, the family didn't know she was missing until they showed up for a visit sometime later. Once they learned she wasn't there, they immediately filed a missing persons report. In October of 1958, skeletal remains were discovered near the Grand Canyon, and this is when Mary's disappearance became known to the Coconino County Sheriff's Office. Officers believe that the bones may have belonged to the missing 20-year-old, as the clothes she was last reportedly seen in matched. However, it was quickly ruled out as forensic anthropologists labeled the remains, now known as Little Miss X, as that of a 14-year-old non-native female. While there have been no signs of Mary, the family has given DNA samples for any future comparisons. They continue to check in regularly with the sheriff's office for updates. And if anyone has information in Mary's case, the sheriff's office would like a call at 928-227-5033. Antoinette Cayodito. Another member of the Navajo Nation, Antoinette Cayodito, was born on December 25, 1976, in Gallup, New Mexico, to Penny Cayodito and Anthony Montoya. Antoinette's parents got divorced when she was young, and she, along with 2 sisters, Sunita and Wendy, went to live with their mother, Penny. Antoinette attended Lincoln Elementary School and was a 4th grader, and her nickname at the time was Squirrel. Penny said of her daughter that she was known to dote on her siblings, that she was a bright and mature girl. By the time she was 6 years old, she was cooking for her younger sisters. Her younger sister Wendy later recounted how Antoinette would cook, clean, iron, and care for her sisters as though she was their own mother. On April 6, 1986, the brown-haired, brown-eyed 9-year-old and her younger sisters were at home with a babysitter. Penny was out with friends, returning at around midnight, at which time the babysitter left. At this time, Antoinette was wearing a pink nightgown. The girls were asleep, and Penny herself went to sleep around 3 a.m. According to Sunita, someone knocked on their door sometime after that, and Penny answered. Years later, Wendy would report that on the night of the abduction, she followed her sister toward the door. She heard Penny ask who was at the door, and a man replied, quote, "Uncle Joe," end quote. She was carried off, kicking and yelling, to a brown van. In the morning, Penny went to wake all the girls, and that's when she found Antoinette was missing. After searching the house and neighborhood, she called the police and reported her daughter missing. Penny said of that day, quote, "We went looking for her around the house. Nothing. I didn't start panicking until we checked with all the neighbors. Went to every house, and nobody had seen her," end quote. A neighbor later reported seeing an older model brown truck with New Mexico license plates outside Antoinette's home between 6:30 and 7 a.m. The neighbor saw a man getting out of the truck and walk towards Antoinette's house, but was unable to give a description of the man. The girls did have an Uncle Joe, but he had an alibi for the night of the disappearance and was quickly ruled out as a suspect. Some sources state that authorities made Penny wait 8 hours or 24 hours before they would accept her report. In any case, it wasn't until the next day that police, bolstered by neighbors and family, began the physical search for Antoinette. For 3 days, they conducted active searches. After that, the case remained active and open for weeks and months, but they discontinued the field searches, waiting for evidence or direction of where to search. Crime Stoppers even offered a $5,000 reward, but it still failed to turn up new leads. During that time, Penny was polygraphed, and she failed in several areas, suggesting she knew more information than she was giving authorities. But we all know I don't believe in polygraphs, so I take that with a grain of salt. She was a distraught mother, and if I could pass a polygraph, I likely wouldn't under duress either. A year passed when the police received a phone call. A 911 operator heard a girl's voice on the phone which said, quote, "I am Antoinette Cayodito. I am Antoinette. I am Antoinette Cayodito, and I am in Albuquerque," end quote. The 911 operator asked where she was in Albuquerque when a man in the background yelled, quote, "Who said you could use the phone?" end quote, followed by the girl screaming before the phone was disconnected. The call lasted a mere 40 seconds, making it untraceable. Police brought the recording to Penny, who confirmed that she believed it to be the voice of her daughter due to the way that she said the name. Another 4 years passed when, in Carson City, Nevada, a waitress reported a strange interaction. In 1991, quote, "A waitress in a restaurant in Carson City told the Carson City police about a strange incident that she had witnessed that particular day. She waited on a table at which sat a male and female, rather unkempt, and a small girl about the age of 14 or 15. The little girl would deliberately drop a utensil on the floor. The waitress put the utensil back on the table, and the little girl grabbed her hand. And the waitress thought nothing of it and went about her business. The threesome left the restaurant, and the waitress went back to the table and began to bust the table. She lifted up the plate belonging to the girl. Beneath was a napkin that said, "Please help me, call the police." By the time she realized what had happened, the couple and the girl were gone, end quote. She believed it to have been Antoinette. Penny Cayodito died in 1999, however, and whatever she knew was taken to the grave. Wendy later said that the situation broke her family, as they both reportedly began drinking and using drugs to cope with the loss of their sister and daughter. In 2006, the FBI closed the case, citing lack of evidence. However, the Gallup PD has kept her case open as of 2024. Anyone with information regarding Antoinette's case is urged to call the Gallup Police Department at 505-863-9365. Jamie Lynette Yazzie. Jamie Yazzie was born to parents Ethelene Denny and James Yazzie. Jamie was the mother of 3 boys and worked as a nursing assistant in the pediatric center of the Pinion Health Center on the Navajo Nation in Pinion, Arizona. She was dating a man named Trey James, and family reported not feeling good about their relationship. On June 30th, 2019, Jamie and Trey began arguing over Trey's infidelity. The next day, Jamie failed to show for work, and Trey simply stopped contacting or even attempting to contact Jamie. Since this is unlike her, a coworker notifies police. On July 1st, Trey went to his aunt's house and, according to his family, was acting strange. His sister reported seeing him with a handgun and was, quote, "aggressive, nervous, and paranoid," end quote. Ethelene had been taking care of Jamie's children at the time, but Jamie hadn't called to check in the days. All of Ethelene's calls went unanswered, and so she contacted Jamie's work and learned that she hadn't been there for days either. With that information, on July 5th, 2019, Ethelene reported that her daughter missing to the Chinle Police Department. 3 days later, on July 8th, investigators went to Jamie's house. Quote, during the consent search, investigators found a spent 9mm casing, a spent .22 casing, a red-colored substance that appeared to be blood on the floor, and white-colored substance that appeared to be a cleaning agent on the floor, end quote, wrote FBI Special Agent Dustin Drace. The potential blood wasn't just on the floor either. It was on the walls and baseboards. The bed had been stripped to the mattress, and the mattress was stained. There were blood marks in the hallway. There was a gun in the house, along with ammunition. Still, at this time, inexplicably, Trey was not interviewed. Quote, the first time law enforcement had any contact with Trey James following Jamie's disappearance took place on an unrelated call to which Chinle PD responded in July of 2019, end quote, said Gomez, the Denny family attorney, in a press release she sent out after the DOJ press release. Quote, even at that time, law enforcement did not interview James about Yazzie's disappearance. James' first interview by law enforcement didn't take place until January 2022, 2 months after Yazzie's remains were discovered, end quote. Meanwhile, Jamie's family was unrelenting in their search for Jamie. For 876 days, they held walks to raise awareness. They posted flyers. They even put a billboard seeking public assistance. Once her remains were found, they put up additional billboards asking for help finding the killer. And during this time, multiple women came forward to relay stories of abuse at the hands of Trey James. On the Hopi Reservation, her body was found 7 miles from the house she lived in on November 23, 2021. She had been shot in the back of the head. Still, it took 3 months before authorities confirmed that the remains were hers. Then, information was released to the media first, before the family, meaning the family continued to search for Jamie for 3 months when authorities already knew where she was. Quote, if law enforcement agencies and the Department of Justice really cared so much about Native American lives, why didn't they do even a 1-mile spoke search of the area surrounding James' home, end quote, asked Gomez. Quote, why was he allowed to roam free for nearly 2 years, victimizing 3 other women in the interim, before he was arrested for Jamie's murder? These are questions investigating agencies have yet to answer, end quote. Special Agent Drace stated in an affidavit that Trey James shot and killed Yazzie between June 30th and July 5th, 2019 in Pinion. Quote, the victim was killed by a gunshot wound to the back of the head, end quote, wrote Drace. Quote, the victim's blood was identified in the bedroom of Trey James. Spent shell casings were found there as well, end quote. At this time, Ethelene was told of Trey's arrest, but she was unaware of what charges there were, noting that they learned the details by listening to another press release. On August 4th, 2022, Trey James was arrested and indicted on 9 counts. Count 1 of first-degree murder and Count 2 of the discharging a firearm concerning the death of Jamie Yazzie. Counts 3 through 9 were domestic violence charges for assault on 3 other women in the years 2018 and 2019 that included kidnapping, suffocation, strangulation, assault with a dangerous weapon, and assault resulting in substantial bodily injury. According to Gomez, despite multiple attempts to contact and coordinate communications about the case, she said the FBI seemed to stonewall the firm and refused to return messages. Her office received a phone call from the family's victim advocate notifying her of the trial, but she was unable to obtain copies of James's charging documents and was not made aware of an upcoming press release being published by the DOJ or the FBI. On September 12, 2023, the trial began for all 9 counts in Phoenix, Arizona. Prosecution was led by Assistant U.S. Attorneys Sharon Sexton and Jennifer LaGrange, along with Albuquerque, Darlene Gomez, again as counsel for Jamie's family. On September 27th, the jury returned to the courtroom with a verdict: guilty on all counts. According to Ethelene, quote, "It's a good feeling. It's amazing. We've gone this far, and I thought it would never come, but today's the day, and I am so happy," end quote. Sentencing was scheduled for January 29th, 2024, and at that time, U.S. District Court Judge Douglas L. Reyes listened to victim impact statements, including that of James Yazzie. James passed away in November 2023, but a video was provided to the court that was recorded before his passing to serve as his victim's statement on his daughter's case. Quote, "Taking my daughter away, taking my grandkids' mom away, it hits you right in the heart to see what they have to go through," end quote. Jamie Yazzie said in this video, quote, "Trey James, you took my precious daughter away from me. I hope that you get the top punishment you deserve," end quote. Then the judge listened to the final remarks before giving his own remarks to Trey. Reyes stated, quote, "You destroyed not only their lives, but you negatively impacted their families' lives," end quote. Then he handed down the sentence of life in prison for first-degree murder and an additional 10 years for the discharge of a firearm in the use of violence. These sentences were to run consecutively. In the other counts related to the acts of domestic violence committed against 3 other Navajo women he was in a relationship with, Reyes sentenced James to an additional 10 years in prison to run concurrently and 5 years of supervised release for each of those assaults. Of the sentencing, Ethelene stated, quote, "There is no sentence you can impose that will balance the scale," end quote. Jamie's sons, then 18, 14, and 10, along with other relatives and supporters, were there at sentencing. Another dozen supporters or so stayed outside to demonstrate on the sidewalk, chanting and beating drums. After sentencing, FBI Phoenix Special Agent in charge, Jose A. Perez, stated, quote, "Today's sentence underscores the fact that Jamie Yazzie was not forgotten by the FBI or our federal and tribal partners. Our office is committed to addressing the violence that Native American communities in Arizona face every day, and we will continue our efforts to protect families, help victims, and ensure that justice is served in each case we pursue," end quote. Gomez herself stated, quote, "This journey has been incredibly, incredibly hard," end quote, because they have had to consistently go up against the judicial system where there's no justice for Native Americans. Gomez said that Indigenous people need to hold law enforcement and leaders accountable, whether that be tribal, state, or federal, because the federal government has a trust responsibility to protect tribal nations. Quote, "For all those other families out there can be justice for you," end quote. She said, quote, "Vindicating the rights of missing and murdered Indigenous persons requires all of the energy and compassion we have," end quote, U.S. Attorney Gary Ristanio said in a prepared statement. Quote, "That means not only investigation and prosecution of tough cases, but also community engagement, cultural competence, and active listening to next of kin and other family members," end quote. The family, too, hoped that the verdict would encourage other MMIW victims' family members as a positive sign to keep fighting. Quote, "I'm pretty sure this will help a lot of other families, a matter of coming forward and putting an effort in it, not giving up no matter what. It was a long 4 years, but we did it," end quote, said Ethelene, also stating it was the MMIWR victims and families that supported them throughout the ordeal, but not of their nation. Quote, "And we did it alone," end quote, said Gomez. Quote, "We didn't get any help from the Navajo Nation. If the Navajo Nation doesn't support their women, how can we expect mainstream Americans to support them?" End quote. Quote, "Hopefully the Navajo Nation will realize they have to put in effort," end quote, to support MMIWR victims and families. And lastly, quote, "We've put a lot of miles on our moccasins and not on a paved road. We've taken the red road with potholes and washed out washes, end quote, stated Gomez. And that is the cases of the MMI women for this month. To all those out there listening, be careful. It's a dangerous world we live in.